Gemma. Yes,
Oh,
we
there
are
you go.
live. That's good. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this LinkedIn Live, which is ahead of the Global Workforce Innovation Summit, which is going to be taking place in May, which it seems a long way away, but it's actually not. It's very, very soon. And the aim of today really is just to give you a little taster of the kind of things that are going to be talked about at the summit, the kind of conversations that everybody is going to be having. So today we are joined by Gemma Atkinson, who is the Global Chief People Officer at Active International. Gemma, you're obviously going to be talking at GWIS, as we're calling the Global Workforce Innovation Summit, because it's quite a mouthful. And you've got a long career in this, and you would have started out in human resources, or that's when you first went into this. It was called human resources, and now we talk about people. That's very important. And when we met the other day, I think my classic question to you was, is it just a word, or does it actually mean something now? Is it the switch from HR to people? Is it starting to have the impact that you would want it to have?
So thank you, Claire, and welcome everybody. And I think that is a really great question to start. And when we think about transforming our workplace and our workplace of the future, I think we've come a really long way. Maybe some people on this call will remember when it was called personnel. Then moved to human resources. And when I think of a resource, I think of an asset or a unit that we draw down on. And I think when we're thinking about scaling businesses and creating sustainable, interesting, exciting workplaces, I don't think human resources does it justice. So I think one of the first things that I did when I stepped into the role was rebrand from human resources to people and culture. And it's more than just a rebrand. I think at the heart of every business are people and their potential. And that, to me, is one of the most exciting paradigm shifts that we're going to see now and into the kind of next 5 to 10 years.
Do you think it's being grabbed? I mean, obviously, people who are working in it are completely behind that.
Yeah.
But are you seeing that? I mean, obviously, you're in an organisation, you're in a traditional organisation that's been around for a long time. How's the move been to looking at people, and not just the word, but actually the change?
So I think you've got to embed it into the organisational structure. It's not just a rebrand where you change one sign on a Monday from human resources to a people and culture sign on a Tuesday. You've got to think about what that fundamentally means. And when I think about people and culture, it is really the employee experience. One of the things that I know will be a hot topic of conversation at the conference will be, how do we recruit and how do we retain top talent? And both of those are really big challenges. And I think you've got to be an employer of choice, and that means putting people at the heart of everything you do. How are we going to get the best of people? How can they turn up to work and know that they're being supported and invested in to be their best and do their best? And that isn't a one and done. That requires a whole different mindset, skill set, tool set, to really make sure that the organisation of the future is based with the individual at the heart of it.
So that's just, I mean, I know you mentioned that when in your abstract about what you're going to be talking about, but it's like it's an enormous cultural shift for so many organisations. I mean, I certainly worked in the traditional ones where it was definitely called personnel. And then I look at my children who are going into organisations and picking them based on their culture, which was never anything we ever even considered back in the day. So that's, I guess, what you're going to be talking about.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a few key areas that I talk about, but I think there are so many areas you could talk about. But if I just kind of focus on one and talking about, your children coming into the workplace now, I think one of the most interesting things is we now have a workplace of multi-generations. So we have 5 generations in the workplace, and I don't believe it's a one-to-many. I think it's where we can, and it's a challenging task, but with huge opportunity. It's a one-to-one versus one-to-many. So I think when we talk about people and culture, we're also talking about communication. We're talking about how do we communicate with a multi-generational workforce who have different motivations, different expectations, different drivers, different responsibilities, and how do we create opportunities for those multi-generations to work together and work well together, knowing that there is both similarity and difference. So it's a challenge, but I think it's an exciting one.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely see that challenge, don't you, in the fact that everybody wants, or a lot of people want the choice to work from home, but as a new joiner, as somebody new to an organization, that's incredibly isolating to have not met people and to work from home. And I mean, they talk about the water cooler moments or the banter, and there's a lot of stuff in the press, isn't there, about some very senior people in British businesses I know of saying, oh, we're going to get everybody back in. We're not having any of this home working. And that's that generational difference kind of really laid stark, isn't it?
And I personally, this is definitely my personal opinion rather than my professional global chief people officer opinion. I think that ship has sailed. I think the hybrid working arrangement, I think, can work really well as long as there are frameworks and guidelines. So one of the phrases that I often hear and I've used frequently is flexibility within a framework. I think we need to manage expectations, but I also think we can work really well in this hybrid work environment. And it's understanding what are those moments to connect, and how do we structure a working week to allow people to learn, to upskill, to connect with each other. One of the values that we have in our organization, which I think speaks really well to what you just said, Claire, is connect, care, and co-create. So what are those times when you're perhaps working remotely and you have more administrative tasks or initiatives that you need to kind of get head down and get through? And what are those moments where you're in the office together and it's not the time to be on Teams or Zoom or Google Meet, and you can spend time? And again, this is a controversial thing, but I think we need to spend more time wasting time well and being with people when we're in the office. So if that is your Tuesday and Wednesday or your Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, how are you structuring your working week? So we're speaking to exactly what we said about people and culture and making sure we're creating that culture that allows us to do more and be more.
Yeah, and it is, you've got to allow that, because otherwise you get the point where people go, I don't want to go into the office on that Tuesday and Wednesday because I've got so much to do. And that time is all chatting and conversations and meeting. And so they're kind of avoiding going into the office because they can't fit their work around it. And that's when the framework isn't working and needs to give.
Yeah. And I think there's a difference between being efficient and being effective. And I think what we're seeing a lot of now when people are debating and discussing how work works these days is productivity and efficiency at all costs. And I'm not saying that isn't important in the workplace, it absolutely is, but it's also about being effective and finding those moments. You asked me at the very beginning of our conversation, you know, is the people thing just a kind of a rebrand or a badge, and what does it really mean? And I would say people are about what makes a company great, and culture is about what you celebrate and tolerate. And I think if you get those two things right, I think you've got a real competitive advantage and a real sustainable organization. But it's not easy. It's not easy.
I mean, there's so much to touch on this, because one of the things I was going to say is, you know, does the traditional structures within organizations support this? Because I mean, I don't, you might want to say that's too big a conversation, but you know, the old way of your line manager and everything else, does that work? I noticed in my daughter's business, they don't call them your line manager. They actually call them your new joining coach.
Oh, do they?
When you join for the first, I think 9 months, you have this coach person who is your manager, but there's like a lot of relationship building between it. I mean, obviously every organization is different, and again, it could just be a name. It doesn't sound like it is. It sounds like they're coaching them to be able to work happily and so forth as they start their world of work. But can you make the old systems work around that, the old line managers and that kind of setup?
That's such a great question, and I think I'm not one for sitting on the fence, Claire. But I'm going to sit a little bit on the fence here, because I think you need both. I think some of the structures that we have will last and have longevity. I think we do need leaders. I think we do need managers. And I think we need coaches. And I think we need all three for different things. I know one of the things that I think we don't need is a boss. I think that word is redundant. But I think we do need people to help us give direction. I think we need support to navigate decisions or projects or initiatives. And I'm a big supporter and a fan of the coaching framework and mentality. I'm actually an executive coach myself, and I do some coaching. And I think bringing that into workplaces allows people to experiment. It allows people to be vulnerable. It allows people to take risks, but within an environment where they can do that. And I think that's going to be one of the biggest shifts over the next 5 years in terms of how work is structured. So I think some things, to answer your question, will remain, but I do think we're all living in much more ambiguity and less certainty. And I think we need to be able to flex with that, which is a skill in itself. And I think, if we think about what we need to do to support individuals coming into the workplace or reimagining what workplaces are like, I think learning how to be adaptable and learning how to cope with ambiguity is one of the biggest things that we can do.
Well, you said it before, didn't you? The flexibility within a framework, getting a bit of love there from Davin in the chat, which is kind of, you can't have these really hard and fast rules because actually you're dealing with human beings. It's like they say, working with children and animals. And that's kind of, now we need to realize that's how we are working with human beings, with feelings and things happening. And that idea of you went to work and you were one person and you were one person at home is really quite hard to live up to. It's probably quite damaging to your psyche to have to be like that. So work needs to be somewhere where it's safe to be you. Davin's also said a great conversation, and he likes the distinctions you're making. And he's mentioned Gary Ridge and WD-40 Company, who replaced the term managers and bosses with coaches and leaders long before COVID, and it created one of the best cultures in the world.
Love that. I love that. And I think the organizations that are willing to look up and out and think differently, we've got a lot to learn from them. And I think it will take time. I'm a big fan, people that know me know I often talk about James Clear and his book Atomic Habits.
Oh yeah, I think I've read that. It's in the bookshelf.
Yeah, it's amazing book. And anyone listening today, please go and search it out. But one of the things he says is we can all make a 1% improvement every day. And the compound interest of that across a year is significant. So I would kind of have a call to arms for organizations to say, what's your 1% better every day? And it's about meaningful work. It's about purposeful work. And it's about creating an environment where people want to stay and want to join. And as you said, Claire, at the very beginning, there are so many things we could talk about and so many things we can do. I think sometimes we just get overwhelmed by the entirety of what we could focus on. And using a line that I know has been used very many times before, I think by the leaders at Apple, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And I think there are so many things we can do, but what is the difference that's going to make the difference? And how do we make the complex simple? Much easier said than done. And I get it wrong as much as I get it right. But if you don't try it, you don't succeed.
Well, I mean, we don't want to keep everyone's time too much today, but it was really great to get a taste. So couple of the points you made, which I found quite interesting because it might play into as well how the conference is going to run. You talked about people being what was your vision? It was co-creators, I think you said.
Absolutely.
And I mean, and that's my passion in events. I want people to stop being participants in events and be co-creators. So you could kind of align it to the concept of people and change within organizations, is that it's to stop just sitting there and letting all the crap happen to you and being at the beck and call or the whim of whatever your bosses decide to do. So it's the same at this conference. We want that idea that everybody is going to co-create it and contribute during it. So I know I'm encouraging all of you, and I know you're up for that we don't just do lots of slides and a presentation and 5 minutes Q&A at the end of your session. So we're going to be inviting people to start thinking, maybe asking you, the audience, questions. So that kind of idea is going to hopefully permeate there, where you are going to be co-creators of your conference, guys. So bear that in mind. Don't come sitting there thinking, well, I'm just going to sit in the back with a coffee on my phone. We're going to be talking to you. Lots of love for Atomic Habits. So I know I started it. I'm terrible. I do end up going for fiction every time rather than mind improving, and I need to start reading those books. But let's all start reading that then ahead of the conference. And obviously, do you know what day you're talking yet, Gemma?
believe it's on the Wednesday. Let me just check, Claire. May the 23rd, Wednesday morning, 10:30.
So bang in the middle. That's perfect. You'll get maximum viewers for that. So obviously, everybody, the event is May the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th.
That might be the Thursday then, Claire. I might have got my days confused.
Okay, we'll stay
23rd. It's the 23rd.
Stay to the last day. They will anyway. I have an opportunity, I believe, to help you all get a ticket if you are watching at 50% off. So here is the link at the bottom of the screen. Just get to, yes, okay, that's quite, hopefully that'll flash up again, but obviously watch it back again and then you'll be able to see it. So go and register, and this is Gemma's discount, apparently it's not mine. I personally thought it was my discount. It's Gemma's discounted link, so copy this link to get to your ticket, which is eoceventsnetwork.com/discount/1/GWiz. Brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you so much to you, Gemma. And I'm sure anybody has any more questions, then link in with Gemma and ask them, because then she can be thinking about them before the conference. And we're going to do a few more of these LinkedIn Lives with some of our fabulous speakers at GWiz. Obviously, if you're following the link to GWiz, you will see them. They will come up if you are following. So go and make sure you do follow GWiz so you can see when the next one is. I believe we have one next week, but I didn't write down the date and the time. And I'm of that age that if it's not written down, I will not read it out because I'll probably get it wrong. But thank you so much for contributing to the chat, everybody. Loved hearing from you, Davin and Joan and Esther. And there's more of you above there. Thank you, Adinka, and lots of you coming in from Nigeria, which is great as well. Love to hear that. So we will see you all in London in May. And if you haven't signed up, go and do that now. Thank you so much, Gemma.
Thank you, Claire. Look forward to seeing you all.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.